Hey, welcome back. I'm so glad that you came back to see me again. I hope you had a good spooky season. I know I did. But now with Halloween over, sad face, we get to move on to Christmas. Mariah Carey's been thawing out in the back. And this year, I can't wait to show you my elaborate theme that I have planned out for the Grinch.
The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea.
It's everyone's favorite grumpy guy that turns super merry and cheerful.
God bless us, everyone.
So my plan for this wreath is to make a huge diorama piece, starting out by sculpting Mount Crumpet. So let's see if I can make the Grinch's heart grow 3 times the size this season. And we're just gonna start off by sculpting with clay. So let's get to it. So the first thing I do is I pick out a wreath and then take a piece of floral foam and make the ground piece for the diorama. And then I take tinfoil and cover the sides of the wreath. This will protect the actual wreath from getting clay or silicone or anything like that stuck into it. And then I use some masking tape to just secure it in place. Now I can start using the monster clay, which is in a gray medium, to cover the wreath to make the mountains. I did look at a bunch of stock photos from all the different movies and decided to make 2 pointed mountains on each side and a cave for the Grinch to stand in to look down onto Whoville. So here I am just pushing the clay into a rough shape of 2 mountains. Then I lightly sketched out where I wanted the cave to be and added some rocky type boulders around that piece. The idea is to have a cave where he can stand in and have a back glow behind him, so it needs to look like a platform. Now I'm going to start putting some lumpy bumps around the mountain to give it kind of more of a rocky type shape. Now I need to smooth out all the bumps so it doesn't look like fingerprints in the mountain. Using some flat edge tools, I'm going to start making some lines and flat edges to give more of a shape of a rock. Delicious rocks.
A delicious looking limestone rock.
Though I don't plan on eating this clay rock like the rock biter from Neverending Story. So I just keep fine tuning it with lots of different tools to give more of a rock type shape. Then I take this triangle flat tool and just kind of carve lots of little nicks and flat edges all over the clay, giving the piece lots of texture, which is really important when it comes to clay. Making sure the Grinch's cave is extra Grinchy. Now I'm going to go start working on the right side mountain, giving it, again, lots of lumpy bumps that I smooth out, and giving lots of nicks into the clay to give the rocky texture. Now with the mountains down, I can lay it down and start making a mold out of silicone. Using my favorite pink goo from Smooth On. This one is Rebound 25, and always reminds me of Ghostbusters 2.
You worthless piece of slime!
I really should try yelling at my pink slime next time. The first layer of the pink slime is actually one of the most important ones. So you need to make sure that you get all the little areas and leave no bubbles. Then I do a second layer that's thicker, more like cake icing. If only it was delicious like cake icing. That's the second food joke I've made. I might be hungry. Aw, look at my sleepy Zeusy. And now I'm gonna go back with a wet paper towel and just kind of push down all the hard edges. Now to place the keys, which is just cut up silicone pieces so the fiberglass shell can fit onto it correctly. And here's where my camera died and I did not get any footage of me putting the fiberglass shell on top. Also, of course, I lost the footage of me casting it in resin and then backfilling it with foam. But if you want to see this process, I would suggest watching my Creature of the Black Lagoon video.
But back to it. So here I am demolding Mount Crumpet and the sister mountain, I don't know, the second mountain that I'm going to do. And then here I am cutting out the foam to hollow out the piece so it would fit back on the wreath, putting it back on the wreath, and then adding more foam back in. Yes, lots and lots of foam. So it would adhere to the wreath correctly. Now I'm going to cut away any of the foam that is sticking out. This is cured and dried, so it's very easy to just break off. Aw, look at him lay down. Zeus is the king of looking cute. All that cuteness and I'm just mindlessly stabbing away. I also added another brick of the floral foam to give it more of a structure. Then I used the gaps and cracks to fill in, guess what? The gaps and cracks. Yep, just stick around because I have all the dad jokes. And while I add more layers and it cures, I'm going to start working on the Whoville sign. I just quickly sketched out, cut out, and then sanded the sign so I can add some clay on top of it. I probably didn't need to add the clay, but I like the dimension it gave it. And because I'm always multitasking, while that bakes in the oven, I'm going to start making the Christmas tree for the Whoville village. I start this off by rolling foil into a cone-like shape and then covering it in monster clay. I keep adding more bulk until I start adding the branches, which at this point are pretty much just triangle lumps. Is it just me, or am I about to get sorted into my Harry Potter house? I'm definitely a Hufflepuff. Makes me miss Universal and Butterbeer. So I'm gonna just keep adding triangle lumps of clay to get this wonderful Christmas tree look. Now with the basic shape done, I can move on to smoothing out the clay. I'm actually using a tool I made myself, which is pretty cool. It's made out of a guitar string. It acts like a little rake so it can smooth out all the little bumps. And then I use a torch to smooth out the monster clay even more. Now with the clay all smoothed out, I can start adding in texture. I just make lots of little lines that will be perfect later to fill in with like a darker paint to give the piece more dimension. Then I use some clay softener to buff it out. And then my initial plan was to take these retro light bulbs, stick them into the tree, and leave impressions so I could put them in again later. But I ended up not liking how they looked and I didn't use them, but you'll see that later. Now I'm going to add little ornament dots all over the tree. I just did this by rolling out little balls and then pushing them into the tree. Now I'm going to take a pair of pliers and just remove all the bulbs. It's ready for pink slime. This piece was actually especially hard to put silicone on because it had a lot of ridges that you'll see I'll brush over and then just a spot would show up and leave a bubble, and you have to make sure to get all the little crevices, which is why I'm using a chip brush to really get into the spaces. And then after it's cured, I can demold it. It was actually a huge pain in the ass to get this off, but I did it. Now I'm going to rotocast it by using 65D resin, and that just means pouring resin into it several times and rotating it around to get a thin layer of plastic all around it. This process still makes it hollow, which is perfect for this project because I want to put lights in it and still get it to light up. And here I am back on the struggle bus trying to get the silicone off, but I did it. It's because I'm just so strong. Now I'm going to use a drill bit and drill out the holes for the lights, and here you see me testing out the theory that the lights will light up, and I hated it, but you'll see that more later. Now I'm going to give the tree a dark base paint color. This is so it can fill in all the little cracks and crevices before I go back over with a lighter color and sponge over it so you can still see the beautiful details I carved into it. Definitely one of my favorite painting techniques. I thought putting these plastic vintage lights in it would look really cool, but it just wasn't vibrant enough for me. So I ended up taking them out and using wired lights by feeding them through each hole. Though this was another pain in my butt, you'll see later that it was so worth it. And now we can move on to sculpting the Grinch. The first thing that I do is I take wire and make a skeleton for him and bulk him up using aluminum foil. And of course he needs arms, how else is he gonna steal Christmas? Then I can start adding clay to his body yaddy yaddy. giving him the cutest little elf feet, and again giving him arms to steal Christmas with. And here I am squishing some clay onto his head and giving him a cute little Santa hat before carving his very cute but mischievous grin. I like to rough out the features of kind of where I want his nose and his eyes before I start bulking up areas like his cheeks and his nose. And the Grinch has like a really big muzzle piece. I don't know what else to call it. You know, like the piece between your nose and your mouth. You know, that piece. Really making sure to bulk up those types of features. And then I gave him some teardropped eyes before going back and kind of smoothing out all the little pieces that I've already done. I think the cutest part of the Grinch is his nose. I just love how tiny it is with his little nostrils. Now I'm going to add the brim of his Santa hat. Now I can start working on his hands. I just take a pair of scissors and clip out his fingies and then roll them out ever so gently. I want this hand to look like he's listening, like in the movie when he's waiting for the Who's to be really upset that he stole Christmas on Christmas Day. And his other hand, I want to be in the position like he's holding it out, leaning over. I use the same method of cutting it out with scissors and then just gently rolling out those fingies. Then I squish it into place and blend. Blend, 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 blend. Then I start working on the rest of the trim of his Santa coat. I like to use the back side of my tool to give it some cool little texture pieces. And because he's polymer clay, I like to give him a bake before I make a mold out of him. I take some monster clay and squish it around him because this is going to be a split mold. If you're going to attempt this, there's so many videos on it that are better than mine. So go do your research if you want to try to do this, because the materials are pretty pricey and you don't want to mess it up. Now that half the mold has been poured, I can flip it over, remove the monster clay, and then pour the other half. And here I am undoing that split mold. I just take off the cardboard and use a razor blade to kind of cut the thin layer that adhered together. But it's just a small layer on the outside, and then you can pull it apart like so. And then also cut that little straggler. But there you go, there's your split mold. I always love removing the clay piece in one piece. It makes me feel so good. Now I'm going to pour some resin inside the mold and vacuum degas it. You want to do this when the mold is very, very tiny and has a lot of details. Can you see the little bubbles coming out of it? Now I can add the top piece back on, pour more resin, and degas it again. And if you don't know what degassing is, it's just a chamber pot that removes all the air. That way it removes any little bubble that could be trapped in that cast. With this type of resin, you have to work fast because it only has a pot life of 5 minutes. You actually don't want to leave the pressure on while it's curing. You want to remove it and have it at room pressure while it's curing the rest of the way so it doesn't have extra weird little bubbles. Now with it cured, we can open it up and see what we got. As you can see, the pressure from the tank makes it seep out to the sides, but that's okay because you can clean this up very easily by just breaking it off, and then I take a Dremel and sand it later to get it really smooth. Now with him done and just needing to be painted, I can move back on to the wreath. With the expanding foam cured, now I can shave down the bulk to look more like the terrain I'm looking for. I'm going to use one of my favorite tools, the Dremel, to sand it down into a rocky type terrain. I was aiming to give it more flat edges so it looked like the side of a mountain. Then using my X-Acto knife, I gave it some more sharp edges. With the base of the wreath finished, now I can move on to painting it. Initially, I used a type of paint brand that refused to give me any kind of good coverage. Maybe it's because I don't usually airbrush too much, but I swear it just would not give me any color. I was lucky enough to find a brand that did, which I'll tell you about later. But here I am at least giving a good first base coat. Now I'm going to move on to the backboard that's going to be the background piece on the wreath. And as you can see again, just awful coverage with this brand of paint. I did decide to do a solid brush coat because I just could not get any coverage with that. And you can still see through it, it just drove me nuts. So I decided to go to the store and pick up some deco art paint. And let me tell you how much better the coverage is with this. I mean, look, I just did one layer and it's all set and ready to go. Then I went through the mountain and painted in some shadow pieces, which I'll go over again later with a sponge to help blend some of the shadows in better. And with the white paint still wet, I went back over with black and just got all the little creases and holes. This technique is really cool because it gives it some dimension and shadow pieces. But then I went back over with white anyways and sponged over it to kind of dull it down. And here's my amazing deco art paint. And hey, I would be so proud to be sponsored by you, Deco Art. Please reach out to me. And that's what I'm aiming to do, is be sponsored by products that I actually use in my projects. Because in my opinion, when you do a piece like this that takes so much time and effort, you really want to use quality products. And see, here we go, more deco art. This is me using it and watering it down for my airbrush, and you'll see right here, the coverage is so much better than the other stuff. Another thing is there's no lumps when you water it down, which is really important if you airbrush, believe me. And here I am attaching the backing to the wreath, testing out where the tree will be, and then just retouching up some of the airbrush. And now I can start making a mock-up of the Who village. I like to use scrap paper to cut out shapes to see if they'll fit in the places I want them to and look good. I'm such a visual person that I have to see it before I actually do it. Then I take those mock pieces, trace them out onto wood, and then cut them out and sand them. I actually really wish I had a wood cutting machine for these parts of the project, but you know, I don't. So I just do everything by hand. And here I am painting in some mountains for the background, really giving it that cartoon feel from the classic Grinch movie. Though my favorite version of the Grinch movie is the Jim Carrey 2000 version, which is just because Jim Carrey's so funny.
6:30, dinner with me. I can't cancel that again. 7 o'clock, wrestle with my self-loathing. I'm booked.
This is what happens when you grow up in the 90s. What's your favorite Jim Carrey movie? Let me know in the comments below. I would say mine is Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls.
Alrighty then. You know something? You're right.
I will never not laugh at that. Shout out to my dad. Love you, Dad. Now let's get back to the Who village. I'm going to take the pieces of wood that I cut out and cover them in clay like I did for the sign. I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and cut out the windows and the door. And like I said, you don't need to do this, but I think it's really cool and gives it dimension. Also, this is polymer clay, so I just baked it like it is on the piece of wood and it stuck to it great. I did make sure to smooth it out and make it as even as possible. And I did the same for the sister house and cut out the windows. But this time I did not cut out a door because I'm going to make a 3D piece that kind of pops on top like that. Again, covering it in clay, smoothing it out, and then cutting out the door on that upper piece. And now with them baked, I can paint them pink, which for some reason this pink just reminds me of the Simpsons house. Do 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 do. Okay, now I can move on and start putting in some of the lighting for the house. I pull up the lights from the other side and glue the house panels in place, and then stuff the inside of the house with cellophane gift paper so the lighting kind of glows in just more of an even way. Now I'm working on that little 3D pop piece of the other house that I'm just lining with foam clay. Then I pull the lights through on the right side and put the house panel pieces in place, gluing them with some hot glue, and then stuffing it again with that cellophane gift paper. I don't know why I like the gift paper so much in front of the lighting. It looks so pretty to me. So you'll just have to trust me. And then here I am putting some wood pieces for the roof. Even though you're not going to really see the roof, I still want it to be structurally sound. And you'll see why it doesn't matter right here, because I'm going to cover all the roofs in this foam clay. I absolutely love using this foam clay, and it's even better for snow pieces because it just looks like snow so easily. I love it, and you should use it. Now I can start adding little details to the houses, which is one of my favorite things to do. It's all about the details. I found these cute little lights from Michael's that makes the houses look so festive, like they're ready for Christmas. Then I made this house its own cute little wreath. I mean, how cute is it that there's a wreath on the wreath? I don't know, I love it. And then I made this house its own little garland that goes above the door with a little mini bow. I mean, I just love tiny things, everything tiny. Now I can start feeding another light strand through for the Christmas tree, which I just fed the lights through all the little holes, which is actually a lot harder than it sounds. And then I fed the lights through these cute little lanterns that I found again at Michael's. Michael's actually carries really cute miniatures for every season. I love going there and picking out these little tiny things. I love tiny things. Now with Whoville lit up, I can start pulling the lights around the wreath and light up all the other features. For the cave, I just pulled it through a spot in the back of the cave and put the lights where I'd liked them and put some hot glue. And guess what? Then I put some more gift paper in to make it glow so evenly. I love the gift paper. Then I 3D printed this case that is going to be the moon and put it in place with some foam spray, go figure, and then just hot glued the lights around the moon on the inside of the casing. Then I pulled the lights through the sky part, which is one of my favorite things to do, is create like kind of a cool midnight sky, which I do this by just weaving it around the grapevine and then painting the wire the same color as the background. Now I'm going to give the top moon piece a nice even airbrush coat, and guess what? Use that gift paper again and just kind of glue it into the backing and cut around it so it gives it a nice glow, and ta-da, there it is. And then I just glue the moon in place. Now I'm going to work a little bit on the bottom terrain by adding some foam pieces to look like snow and some fake trees to give nice foliage. That's a good word, right? Foliage. Now I'm going to go back to the Whoville sign and just hand paint the lettering of Welcome to Whoville. With the lettering done, I just go back and hand paint some of the details of the shadowing and then add some foam clay later to give snow on top of it. And then attach it in place. Now I'm going to go back and sculpt some more of the characters that I want to put around the wreath. And of course, what would the Grinch be without his loyal dog Max? Max is definitely my favorite character of the Grinch universe because he is always so loyal and just happy to be there. I can definitely relate. So using polymer clay, I bulk up a body out of foil and then attach all the different shapes of his head and his torso, giving him a mouth and carving out his chest and legs. And then of course I attached hind legs to him because he is a dog and I wanted him to look like he was sitting. I actually took a lot of time to go around and correct his legs because it's one of those weird positions that either it looks right or it looks funky. So I think I did pretty good by carving it down and then making a little hole for his nose. Isn't it so cute? He's just got the cutest little nose. And then I added his eyes and his ears. I made sure to make a nice little depression in the top of his head so I could put an antler in there. See, isn't he so cute? Then I made a mold of him and casted him in resin to make sure he was nice and sturdy, and then painted him brown and gave him a cute little yellow antler. Now with Max finished, I can start working on Cindy Lou. And let me tell you, Cindy Lou was a challenge. I sculpted her quite a few times, and actually what you're seeing right now, I did not keep. But I have to show you this because I think that it's important to know that not everything's gonna always be super perfect, and you gotta just keep trying and practicing till you get what you want, which is an alien looking little child with a giant forehead. And yep, and that's what I did make. Unfortunately, like I said, I didn't keep this head. It just didn't look alien enough for Cindy Lou, so I had to redo it. Anyways, so then I made her a body and bulked it up and used some clay, making her some arms. And just like in the original movie, I wanted her to be holding a wreath, which I thought, again, really cute, having a wreath in a wreath. So I sculpted her holding this wreath, and it turned out really cool. I like that part of it a lot. But I did not like the head, so of course, pop, it has to come off and we have to try again. Goodbye, Cindy Lou, too normal of a head. Hello, alien giant forehead child that I need to sculpt. But as awkward as her head was, I just kept trying until I got this, which, even though it doesn't seem correct, it is. Her head is that big, like the Megamind guy. Then I added her hair, which is a little more wispy than the other ones, which I think worked out really well. And with a version that I finally like enough, I gave her a signature paint job of her pink outfit, her yellow blonde hair, and her baby blue eyes. With Cindy Lou done, I need to go back and paint the Grinch, of course, the most important part of this wreath. And to stay on the theme of the wreath, I gave him a cartoony-like paint job. With all the characters painted, I can move on to the Whovilles that stand around the tree and sing. This was a 3D print file that I found, which I will add in the link in the description below. And I'm just painting them black because I just didn't want them to be as shiny. I also 3D printed this sleigh that will go on top of Mount Crumpet. And now I'm just going to put the characters in place, and I'll look at his cute little antler and add some foam clay around them to not only secure them, but look like they're in the snow. I love this foam clay. I love that it could be used as like an adhesive and also just give some cushion to some important pieces. I highly, highly recommend it. I really need to sit down and make an Amazon store so you can go buy the exact materials that I'm using. And here I am just filling out the village with the foam clay and then placing the Whovilles around the tree. Also using the foam clay on top of Mount Crumpet and then putting the sleigh in the snow. Oh yes, and then also using the clay to make Santa's bags in the sleigh. Now I'm gonna go around and just kind of fine tune some detail pieces, like, you know, putting snow on the bottom of the sign, making sure Max has his pupils, don't want to scare children now. Also going and painting all the little ornaments on the tree, tying a bow on top of Max's head where his antler is in place. One of my favorite parts of Max. He's just so cute. Ooh, we're almost done. We're gonna start adding the fake snow, which I just put on with some glue, and then use the scenic snow that is for dioramas, and just kind of put glue everywhere and sprinkle the snow down. It can be very messy, but I think it really adds the perfect detail. While that's drying, I add Cindy Lou real quick and then add some watered down glue on top and add a little bit more to really lock it in place. And we're all finished. Let's go to the reveal. And as always, a huge thank you to my Patreon coven, my new witches, Rachel and Sabrina, my new wizards, Mike and Joey B, and my new archmage, Christine Carlotta. Thank you all so much. You are the max to my Grinch. I hope you're all ready for more Christmas-themed projects coming your way. See you all real soon.